Diplomacy is the best game that ever existed.
Really?
It was JFK and Henry Kissinger's favorite game.
No kidding.
Yeah,
I'll have to
yeah,
look into that. That's I'll put that on the list.
Diplomacy, and it's funny because it's a lot of people's first experience with the game. I found, which was not mine, that like you play it in middle school, like civics classes. Like, oh yeah, we used to play it in middle school civics, but like, yo, it's ruthless. I've never seen more like real life fights come out of a game more so than like Diplomacy. And
Well,
I
what
don't
about
mean like fist fights, but
like people just get very passionate when they play?
yeah. Oh yeah. Like think about
Those are the
it.
best games for the record. Yeah.
Basically Diplomacy it's the eve of World War One. It's 1901, and each player is one of the 7 kingdoms of Europe at the time, and it's basically Risk without the dice.
Oh wow.
There's no randomness in the game at all. At the end of each turn, you submit what your army moves are going to be, you write them down, and you put them on a sheet of paper, and then everybody moves at the same time. But turns are a half hour long because what you're doing for the rest of the time is talking with everyone else to plan out what you're going to do. And so the trick is you can't win the game without allying with somebody, at least one person in the beginning, usually 2 people. But there's no way to win the game unless you break at least one of those alliances.
Right.
So you got to like lie to someone's face at one point and then just like change up your moves, but in a way that they don't think you're lying, so they don't change their moves too. Like
right.
It is so insane, and all the rules of diplomatizing, there are no rules. You can go into a different room and talk to people, but there's no rule that says that other people can't like eavesdrop on your conversation, or you can't send like text messages or like make a call so that someone can hear the entire conversation in another room. Like there's no rules. In fact, our play group had to implement a house rule because one of the things that happened was somebody submitted false orders. They aren't Germany or whatever, like they were Austria, but they wrote an extra move set for Germany, and the game master couldn't tell which one was real.
So they had so insidious.
So they had no choice but to like cancel out Germany's move, because so then the like arms race continued where everybody started appending a signature like to their own move set so that no one could forge their moves anymore. It's amazing.
This is very interesting. This is all like game theory stuff is what this sounds like. It's like for like Prisoner's Dilemma gone wild, basically, where it reminds me of, because I went to United States Military Academy, and while my freshman year I was in world history. Second semester we focused on like more of the contemporary issues like the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we actually simulated the Cuban Missile Crisis, like or like what could have been the Cuban Missile Crisis between us and another history class. One class was like the USSR, another class was the United States. And what was hilarious, was I had a buddy in his class who was Khrushchev, and all he did was he just lied the entire time about what they were gonna do, and they ended up winning the scenario. He just straight up just lying just the whole time, just lying to like the U.S. about, we're gonna withdraw. And they didn't withdraw any missiles. They kept putting more missiles in Cuba, like doing the exact opposite. It was like it was pretty funny, pretty wild.
That's awesome. Yeah, the way I play, and ironically, the way I play diplomacy is the exact opposite.
Yeah,
and I always think that it's the best way. That like I don't lie to anyone, and I am always honest. And like this is why you should do this, or I'm going to do this time because of this. But ironically, nobody trusts me. They think that I'm like trying to get one over on them, or that I'm like I'm being withholding or whatever. So like this whole honesty play like doesn't work in diplomacy. You actually have to be a little withholding so that people like think you're being more honest, which is absurd, but like that's how it works.
It's actually really interesting because I was I've been just learning, just like I said, reading a lot of philosophy recently, and one of the things I've kind of come across is like this is kind of plays into this because it runs downstream of, I guess, like hedonism, but then morality with like pain and pleasure, talking about stuff like David Hume. I'm not sure how deep you are into philosophy, but basically the whole idea with one of the things that comes out of the whole prisoner's dilemma is that the immediate gratification can sometimes be the demise of others, right away, but then conversely can come back and bite you in the ass. And I guess a really good practical example of this is, I guess, like in Alaska or in industrial fishermen, they have to be very careful with how they fish,
Yeah.
because if they fish too much too often or don't work together, it just ends up screwing everyone else over. But that's very much falls in line with, like, it sounds like diplomacy is kind of like, plays with a lot of these ideas as well.
Yeah, and that's the entire game. And for a lot of people, that's why they hate the game, because all the game is talking, right? Like the strategy, the like actual movement strategy isn't really the game. You're not like
Mhm.
tricking anyone with how everybody knows how you move them. The trick is they don't know where you're moving them.
Right.
Or they don't
Exactly.
know who else you've coordinated your moves with.
Oh yeah.
And so like, which is yeah, it's intense, man. If you have 7 people, I would suggest getting an 8th to be the game master for your first time, who understands how to resolve movements, because it can be a little confusing and annoying.
Yes.
Who doesn't play, they just resolve the moves for you. But it's it's a trip. And I play with non-gamers all the time. You play over one day. You start at like 9 a.m. Everybody comes over to your house. You bring breakfast tacos or whatever, and
Love
you
it.
explain the rule. And you explain the rules for the first
Such
hour.
such a parent thing to do nowadays. It's just
Yeah.
like
And then
in the morning versus the
well,
evening.
but also people don't believe you. If you ask people to show up to your house at 9 a.m., there better be breakfast tacos. Right?
Oh, for sure.
And so then, yeah, so then you explain the rules, and then you start play at 10 or whatever. And I'm like, you're going to be playing until 8 p.m. You're going to be playing until 9 p.m. Trust me. And nobody believes me because they're not game players. So they all make dinner plans. And then, or they're like, I'm going to get bored, or I'm going to leave, like whatever, I'll do whatever. And then invariably at like 5 p.m. they're like calling and canceling their dinner plans, being like, I gotta finish this. These like non-gamers will play a 10-hour long game on a Saturday just because of like how fucking engrossing diplomacy is.